My stepmother slapped me in the corporate kitchen, right beside the steady hum of a stainless steel refrigerator. My father just stood there, adjusted his tie, and asked the room, "Who's hungry?" I dabbed the blood from my lip with a company-logoed napkin and smiled at the ceiling camera, because if they thought the kitchen was where I'd be humiliated, they'd clearly never seen me open the door to the boardroom. My name is Rowan Keene. The kitchen on the 28th floor of the Westvale Nutrients Tower is where good ideas are supposed to be born, but it always smells like where they come to die. It's a morgue of stainless steel and white tile, perpetually chilled by an overactive HVAC system. The air is a thin, bitter soup of burnt coffee from a neglected pot and the sharp, ammoniac tang of industrial cleaner. The floor, still damp from the janitor's morning pass, reflects the cold, buzzing strips of fluorescent light overhead, turning everything a pale, sickly shade of gray. This is the company's heart. According to our branding, it feels more like its stomach. I was standing by the industrial-grade espresso machine, waiting for it to finish its groaning cycle, when the scent of Sloane's perfume preceded her like an invading army. It was a dense, floral scent, something expensive and loud that fought with the sterile air of the kitchen and lost, creating a cloying, unpleasant mix. Sloane Keene, my father's wife of 7 years and the chief marketing officer of his company, did not walk. She made an entrance. The sharp, purposeful clicks of her Louboutin heels on the slick tile announced her arrival, and every person in the kitchen, 2 prep chefs, a catering supervisor, and one very young, very nervous marketing intern, stiffened. "Rowan," she said. Her voice was as smooth and hard as polished marble. She didn't look at me, but at the tablet in her hand, her crimson-nailed finger jabbing at the screen. "I'm looking at a rejected PO, code 5729, for the Grayfield Cove retreat." I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the heat fortify me. "I didn't reject it. Sloane, I rerouted it to the correct authorizer." "And who might that be?" The false sweetness in her tone could curdle milk. "Your personal Amex," I replied, my voice even. Her head snapped up, her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, narrowed. The intern, who had been trying to discreetly fill a water bottle, froze completely. Sloane took 2 sharp steps toward me, lowering her voice into a theatrical, menacing whisper. "That was an influencer activation event. It is a legitimate marketing expense." The purchase order was for 200 cases of Dom Perignon, custom floral arrangements from a designer in Paris, and a booking fee for a string quartet. I recited from memory. I had spent the last 48 hours tracing the digital paper trail. The internal notes specified delivery to your private weekend address, the same weekend as your and Dad's wedding rehearsal dinner. That's not influencer activation. Sloane, that's creative accounting, or, as the SEC would call it, fraud. Her perfectly sculpted face tightened. "You have no idea what it takes to build a brand." "I know what it takes to protect one from its own executives." That was when she moved. It wasn't a lunge. It was a quick, viper-like strike. Her hand shot out and clamped around my wrist, her fingers digging into the space between the bones. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "You are a glorified bookkeeper playing cop in your father's company. You will go back to your desk. You will unlock that PO, and you will approve it. Is that clear?" The air crackled. The hum of the walk-in freezer suddenly seemed deafening. I looked down at her hand on my wrist, then back up to her face. I didn't struggle. I didn't raise my voice. I simply held her gaze. "Take your hand off me, Sloane." The slap was the real surprise. It came from her other hand, a blur of motion I didn't see until the impact. It was open-palmed, hard, and precise. My head snapped to the side, a sharp, electric sting exploding across my cheek. In the ringing silence that followed, a heavy wooden spoon, knocked from a prep counter in the motion, fell to the floor. It landed with a series of hollow, clumsy clacks, the sound obscenely loud in the stillness. A single drop of blood, warm and metallic, bloomed on the inside of my lip. That was the tableau my father walked in on. Everett Keene, CEO of Westvale Nutrients, strode into the kitchen, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his bespoke suit radiating quiet, effortless power. He took in the scene in a single, sweeping glance. His wife, hand still raised, breathing heavily, his daughter, holding a hand to her cheek, and a half-dozen employees frozen in place like figures in a wax museum. The air was thick with violence and recrimination. He broke the tension not with intervention, but with performance. He smiled a broad, placid, political smile, the kind that erased all unpleasantness. He adjusted the knot of his silk tie, a small, calming gesture of normalcy. "Well," he said, his voice booming with forced cheerfulness, his gaze sweeping over everyone and landing on no one. "Who's hungry?" It was a masterful act of erasure. In 2 words, he had dismissed the assault, invalidated my shock, and commanded everyone in the room to participate in his fiction. He was fogging the lens, burying the moment under a suffocating blanket of corporate civility. I slowly lowered my hand from my cheek. I could feel the print of Sloane's fingers beginning to warm my skin. I tasted blood. For a moment, a hot, primal rage threatened to boil over, but I had spent years learning to be cold, to be precise, to turn emotion into leverage. I angled my head slightly upward, my eyes finding the small, dark dome of the CCTV camera nestled in the corner where the wall met the ceiling. I pitched my voice low, just loud enough for the high-fidelity microphone I knew was embedded within it. "Thank you, Sloane," I said, my voice a clear, steady thread in the silence. "Evidence of workplace violence, duly noted and recorded." Sloane's face went white. My father's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Around the room, the spell of feigned normalcy was shattered. The catering supervisor, a woman named Maria who had worked here for 20 years, suddenly became intensely interested in a spot on the floor she needed to wipe. The 2 prep chefs turned their backs in unison, a silent pact of non-involvement. The young intern, Chloe, made a small, choked sound. Her eyes were wide with shock and sympathy. Maria subtly reached out and placed a hand on the girl's shoulder, a silent command to stay quiet, to see nothing. This is how you survive in the Keene family ecosystem. Sloane took a step back, her rage now curdling into something like panic. "Don't you dare," she hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Don't you teach me how to do my accounting." I reached into the dispenser on the counter and pulled out a single, crisp paper napkin, the Westvale Nutrients logo, a cheerful, stylized sprout, printed in green in the corner. I carefully brought it to my mouth and dabbed at the cut on my lip, the bright red smear a stark contrast to the wholesome green logo. I didn't break eye contact with her. "I'm not teaching you accounting," I replied, my voice just as quiet, just as cold. "I'm teaching you how to read the law, specifically, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, Section 302. Willful misrepresentation of financial records is a felony. Sloane, one that carries a rather unpleasant prison sentence." I paused, then lifted my gaze back to the camera, ensuring the lens captured my calm, unflinching expression and the blood on the napkin. Frame the narrative. Show control. Her breath hitched. She knew the law. She just never believed it would apply to her. My left hand came up. I tapped the face of my Apple Watch, the screen illuminating. With 2 precise taps, I activated an app and logged the event. 11:32 a.m. Workplace incident. I was creating a clean, immutable, digital timestamp for the HR report I would file. It was a small, quiet, devastatingly efficient motion. My father watched it, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. He knew exactly what I was doing. "Now, Everett, really," Sloane began, turning to him, her voice shifting into a wounded, pleading tone. The victim, it was her go-to move. But my father was already moving on, doubling down on his strategy of denial. He clapped his hands together, the sound sharp and final. "All right, people, let's not dawdle. I'm thinking sandwiches. Who's hungry?" he repeated, louder this time, as if his volume could somehow rewrite the past 60 seconds. He expected me to crumble. He expected tears, an argument, a scene. He expected his daughter to be a daughter. He forgot that he had raised me inside his company, that I had learned my lessons not at his knee, but in his boardrooms. So I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was a sharp, tight, dangerous thing. I folded the bloodied napkin neatly and tucked it into my blazer pocket. Evidence item A. Then, I turned my back on both of them and walked to the bank of commercial-grade ovens against the far wall. I pulled a pair of heat-resistant mitts from a hook. The air in the kitchen shifted. The tension didn't dissipate, but it changed, coiled, became a held breath of anticipation. My father and Sloane watched, confused. I reached down and pulled open the heavy door of the third oven. A wave of warm, delicious air rolled out, carrying the scent of browned butter, vanilla, and melting chocolate. It was a comforting, wholesome smell that was utterly at odds with the cold violence of the room. Inside, sitting on a parchment-lined baking sheet, was a perfect dozen of my sea salt chocolate chip cookies, baked to a flawless golden brown. I slid the tray out and set it on the steel prep counter. They were for the audit committee meeting. My meeting, in less than 30 minutes. The very committee that would receive my official report on financial misconduct and workplace assault, complete with video evidence and a time-stamped log. I looked over my shoulder at my father, at the man who chose his corporate image over his own child. His forced smile was gone, replaced by a look of dawning, horrified comprehension. I let my own smile widen, just a little, and in the ringing silence of the 28th floor kitchen, I knew the game had just begun. The walk from the 28th floor kitchen to my 29th floor office is a journey through a carefully constructed lie. The air here is different, filtered, temperature-controlled, and infused with a subtle, custom scent of white tea and citrus meant to evoke a sense of calm wellness. On the walls, framed posters showcase the Westvale Nutrients corporate philosophy. The slogan, "Feed What's Good," is plastered over sun-drenched images of laughing, multi-ethnic families sharing organic granola, or handsome young farmers holding up perfect, soil-dusted carrots. It's a beautiful, hollow promise. Westvale doesn't feed what's good. It consumes it. It consumes its young. It's naive, it's principled, and it monetizes the bones. I placed the tray of still warm cookies on the credenza in my office. The sweet, wholesome scent now feeling like a bitter irony. My cheek throbs with a dull, persistent ache, a physical reminder of the truth that lies beneath the polished veneer. The company isn't a family, it's a feudal state, and the king just watched his new queen strike his heir in front of the court, then asked what everyone wanted for lunch. Sloane wasn't always the queen. She arrived 7 years ago, when I was 25 and still naive enough to believe in the company my grandfather had built and my mother had helped to steward. Sloane was a brand consultant, a shark in Chanel, hired to revitalize our image. My father, a widower for 3 years and lost in the fog of it, was instantly captivated by her energy, her ambition, her relentless focus. She saw a power vacuum and filled it with terrifying speed. Her 4-month consultation ended with a successful rebranding campaign and an engagement ring. She didn't just advise the company. She executed a flawless, hostile takeover of my father's life, and by extension, mine. The public face of that new era is one of warmth and accessibility. Once a quarter, Everett and Sloane host a town hall meeting in the atrium. They stand on a low stage, wearing matching Westvale-branded fleece vests, and talk about transparency and our shared mission. They take curated questions and call employees by their first names. They look like the benevolent parents of a thriving corporate family. I've seen the internal budgets for those town halls, the cost of the artisanal. Locally sourced lunch catered for 500 employees is a rounding error next to the production costs, the lighting, the sound engineers, the script consultants. That money is siphoned from the R&D budget for our pediatric nutrition line. We feed our employees quinoa salads for an afternoon while quietly defunding the project meant to feed malnourished children. It's the Westvale way. Their favorite photo op is in the main test kitchen, a different one from the sterile utility kitchen on 28. It's a beautiful, broadcast-ready space with copper pots and hanging herbs. The communications department frequently releases photos of Everett and Sloan in pristine white chef's coats, laughing as they sample a new protein bar, the perfect corporate couple, hands-on and passionate. The lie is so seamless you'd never know that the last time Everett was in that kitchen for a non-staged event was to yell at a food scientist who told him a new line of wellness drinks had failed its third round of safety testing. I know because I had to mediate the HR complaint that followed. I got this job, head of compliance and internal investigations, because I was too dangerous to place anywhere else. A year ago, as a senior analyst in finance, I ran a discretionary audit on our supply chain logistics. I was curious about a persistent inefficiency in our Midwest distribution network. It turned out to be more than inefficiency. It was a multi-million-dollar hole. A regional director had been falsifying freight manifests and selling entire truckloads of our premium products on the gray market. It was a sophisticated scheme that had gone undetected for 3 years. When I presented my findings, a 150-page report complete with data trails and damning emails, the board was stunned. My father was both furious at the betrayal and, I think, grudgingly proud. He gave me this position as a reward, and also as a leash. He thought putting me in charge of the rules would make me part of the establishment, that I would learn to bend them for the good of the family. He fundamentally misunderstood me. I don't bend rules, I enforce them. Sloan, on the other hand, sees rules as suggestions for other people. Her favorite role to play is that of the corporate matriarch. She makes a point of mentoring young women in the marketing department, calling them "my kids" in public meetings. She offers them advice, invites them to exclusive women in leadership lunches, and makes them feel seen. But her affection is a currency with a terrible exchange rate. Last Christmas, a junior designer named Amy worked for 2 weeks straight, including weekends, to finish a critical presentation for Sloan. Sloan praised her lavishly in a department-wide email, calling her one of her brightest kids. Her reward for this Herculean effort wasn't a bonus or overtime pay. It was a $100 Westvale Nutrients gift card, which she presented to Amy in front of the entire team. A gift card for a company we own. It was a gesture of such profound, insulting cheapness that it left the entire floor in a stunned silence. Meanwhile, that same week, I had to field a query from a terrified accountant in accounts payable. He'd been instructed by Sloan's office to reclassify a $50,000 charge from a jewelry store in the Hamptons as executive gifts for PR purposes. He came to me, whispering, because he was afraid of losing his job if he refused, and afraid of going to jail if he complied. This is the reality of our perfect Keen family, the one so beautifully curated on LinkedIn. The communications team works overtime polishing the myth. They post articles about Sloan's keynote speech at a charity gala, and my father's op-ed in the Wall Street Journal about ethical capitalism. They are masters of narrative control. 2 months ago, a rumor about impending layoffs in our European division started circulating on the company's internal Slack channels. Within an hour, the primary thread had been locked. By the end of the day, it had been scrubbed from the archives entirely. The message was clear. You will only hear the story we want to tell. For a long time, I believed I could counteract the rot from the inside. I believed in process, in protocol, in the elegant, impartial machinery of corporate governance. I built systems, established anonymous whistleblower hotlines, and rewrote the code of conduct. I truly thought that if I just made the rules clear enough, strong enough, the structure itself would force people to be better. I thought I could make the company straight again by reinforcing its foundations. The slap in the kitchen today was a brutal, clarifying lesson. It taught me that the system is meaningless when the people at the top believe they are above it. My father's casual, "Who's hungry?" was more violent than the slap itself. It was the sound of the entire system being nullified by the whim of one powerful man. You can't straighten a crooked house when the foundation itself is rotten. To make things right, you first have to break what's wrong. I remember a conversation with my father, just after I took this job. He'd called me into his vast, mahogany-paneled office. "Rowan," he'd said, looking at me over his steepled fingers, "you're smart, and you're thorough. But remember your context. Don't push so hard that you break things. At the end of the day, this is a family, and you are a part of it." He meant it as a caution, a reminder of loyalty. But sitting here now, the sting on my cheek a fading echo, his words taste like poison. He wasn't asking me to be loyal to our family. He was asking me to be complicit in his. He was drawing a circle around us, telling me that inside this line, the laws of the outside world, the ones I'd sworn to uphold, didn't fully apply. But the law has no section for family. The SEC doesn't grant exemptions for blood. A crime is a crime, whether the check is signed by a stranger or your father. My course is clear now. The path of incremental change is closed. The path of revolution has just been opened. I turn to my computer and open a new file. Securing it with multi-layer encryption, it's a blank page, a void of infinite possibility. My fingers hesitate over the keyboard for only a moment. This will be my real work now, my audit of the House of Keene. I type the first line, the title of the project, the mission statement of my new life. Start in the kitchen, end in the boardroom. My official job title is Senior Vice President, Head of Compliance and Internal Investigations. This title is a neat, corporate box that describes the functions of my day. It does not describe the reality of my power. My real title, the one I have earned and curated in the 7 years since Sloane's arrival, is different. I am the company's archivist, its confessor, its digital ghost. I am the custodian of its secrets. My real title is Leverage. From my office on the 29th floor, I have administrative access to the central nervous system of Westvale Nutrients. I manage the servers that host the anonymous ethics hotline, a repository of quiet desperation and petty grievances that occasionally yields a gem of actionable intelligence. I control the internal control logs, the unblinking digital record of every door swipe, every login, every file access across our global network, and most importantly, I hold the master key to the digital archive of every security camera on this campus. I am a silent, all-seeing God in this glass and steel pantheon, and my father and his wife have just given me a reason to open the floodgates. The first step is procedure. Always begin with procedure. It provides an unimpeachable foundation for the chaos that follows. The Westvale Nutrients. Workplace Violence Incident Response Protocol, a document I personally wrote 2 years ago, requires any report to be filed within 24 hours. It is currently 1:15 p.m. The clock is ticking. I draft the report with cold precision. I list the time, date, and location. I name the assailant, Sloane Keene, CMO, and the primary witness, Everett Keene, CEO. I describe the unprovoked physical contact, the slap, and the resulting minor injury. I attach the MPEG-4 file I pulled from the 28th floor kitchen camera. File name, Kitchen Cam 7, 10212025, 11:31 a.m., MP4. I quote the specific sections of the employee handbook Sloane violated. Section 4A, Respectful Workplace, and Section 4C, Prohibition of Violence and Threats. Then, I come to the distribution list. Standard protocol dictates the report goes to Human Resources, but our SVP of HR, Cynthia Moss, owes her career to my father. She is a loyalist, not an officer of the company. Sending the report to her would be like sending it directly to the shredder. Instead, I address the encrypted email to one person, Arthur Vance, the lead independent counsel for the board's audit committee. Arthur is a 70-year-old corporate lawyer from a white shoe firm who fears 2 things in this world: an SEC investigation and a poorly executed golf swing. He has no loyalty to my father, only to his own billable hours and his pristine legal reputation. I press send. The first chess piece is moved. The second step is to constrict the blood supply. Sloane's power is derived from 2 sources: my father's affection and the marketing department's colossal budget, which she treats as her personal slush fund. Her pet project is the Westvale Wellness Foundation, a charitable front that does little more than sponsor tables at expensive galas where Sloane can network and get her photo taken. On my system, I pull up all pending and future purchase orders linked to the foundation's internal cost center. There are dozens. I select them all. I don't decline them. That would be too overt. Instead, I flag them for Level 3 compliance review. It's a designation I invented, a bureaucratic purgatory that requires physical signatures from the CFO, the General Counsel, and me. Her funding is now frozen in a procedural ice storm of my own creation. Now, the deep dive begins. For the next several hours, my office is a silent whirlwind of digital forensics. I open a half-dozen windows on my 3 monitors, my fingers flying across the keyboard. My first query cross-references our vehicle logistics GPS data with the building's loading bay access logs. It takes the server 7 minutes to process 3 years of data. The result is beautiful in its simplicity. On Saturday, August 16th, at 1:47 a.m., the night of Sloane's pre-wedding party, the loading bay door was opened using a supervisor's keycard. 10 minutes later, the GPS on company truck 74B, a refrigerated unit, pings to life and travels from our corporate campus to my father and Sloane's private estate in the Braxton Vale Hills, where it remains stationary for 3 hours before returning. A delivery in the dead of night, off the books. Next, the money. I dive into the SAP financial software, running a search for vendor payments routed through Cost Center 5729, the one Sloane uses for influencer activation. The invoices are a masterclass in obfuscation. A $40,000 payment to a vendor called Elite Brand Ambience LLC turns out to be a nationally recognized wedding band. A $15,000 charge from Visual Storytelling Inc. is from a high-fashion wedding photographer. And there it is, Invoice 882A, from a French import company, for 200 cases of Dom Perignon, coded as experiential marketing materials. The date on the invoice is 2 days before her wedding. I download every single one, compiling them into a single, damning PDF. The physical evidence is trickier, but people get sloppy when they think no one is watching. Our executive floors use a proprietary smart waste disposal system to prevent corporate espionage. Before anything is incinerated, it is photographed, scanned, and digitally logged. It's a system I advocated for. I run an image-based search algorithm on the logs from the week after Sloane's party, looking for anything related to prototype almond bites, batch 7C, a highly confidential product not yet released to the public. Bingo. The system returns a high-resolution photograph from a bin on Sloane's floor. It's a shredded collection of packaging labels, but the batch code sticker, 7C, is clearly visible on one of the torn pieces. I remember hearing whispers that Sloane had served a mystery new health bar at her party. She had stolen unreleased, proprietary product to impress her friends. It's not just fraud. It's a breach of intellectual property. Finally, the emails. Using my administrative credentials, I access the legal hold server, where all company communications are archived. I run a search on Sloane's sent items, with keywords like invoice, Grayfield, wedding, and my account. The results are a treasure trove of casual corruption. There are emails to the head of procurement, a man she charmed and then implicated. One subject line is simply, "Help." The body of the message reads, "David, another one from the wedding planner. You know the drill. Make it marketing. You're a lifesaver." But the crown jewel is an email to her assistant. Subject, "Make it disappear, babe." Attached is the invoice for the string quartet. She treated the company's assets like her own private bank, and she was careless enough to leave a pristine digital trail. By nightfall, I have a 300-page dossier of evidence, but internal pressure is not enough. To guarantee victory, I need to bring in outside forces. I need to threaten the foundations of my father's kingdom. I make 2 calls. The first is to Michael Chen, a senior vice president at Sterling Trust Bank, the lead institution on our company's $500 million line of credit. I schedule an informal coffee for the following morning at a cafe far from downtown. I don't mention the reason, but Michael is sharp. He knows a call like this from the head of compliance means trouble. He'll come armed with a copy of our loan agreement, and I know exactly which page he'll turn to. The page that contains the material adverse effect clause, specifically the covenant regarding material ethics breaches by senior leadership, which gives the bank the right to call the loan or demand immediate changes in management. My second call is internal, but it feels more significant. I go to the small, fireproof safe hidden behind a bookcase in my office, a relic left to me by my mother. Inside, past her pearls and some old letters, is a long, sealed envelope of heavy parchment. The front simply says, Rowan, in the elegant, looping script of my grandmother, Eleanor Keene, the woman who founded this company with a single bakery and a dream. I have never opened it. My mother told me to wait for a time when the company's soul was at stake. That time is now. I slice it open. Inside is a letter and a trust document. The letter is short. It speaks of my grandmother's fear that my father's ambition might one day eclipse his integrity. The document details the existence of a special protected class of stock, Class 5 voting shares. They hold no dividend rights and are non-transferable. They lie dormant, with the voting power of a single common share. But the document stipulates, in the event a vote is called for the removal of a CEO or C-suite executive for reasons of gross ethical misconduct, as certified by the Audit Committee, these shares activate. They become super voting shares, each one carrying the weight of 100 common shares. The sole beneficiary of the trust holding these shares, me, it's a poison pill, a corporate kill switch left by a ghost to protect her legacy. My final call is to the Independent Counsel for Westvale's Employee Stock Ownership Plan. The ESOP holds 30% of the company's stock on behalf of its employees. Its votes are typically proxies for management. However, the plan's charter, which I know by heart, states that in the case of a verified material ethics breach, the independent trustee is obligated to vote in the best interest of the employees, not management. I leave a message. This is Rowan Keene. I have a matter of extreme fiduciary importance to discuss. It concerns the protection of employee shareholder value. I lean back in my chair, the city lights twinkling below. The war is no longer just mine. I have now drafted the bank, my grandmother's ghost, and 4,000 employees to my cause. The kitchen was the battlefield. The boardroom will be the abattoir. The paper trail of a life like Sloane's is not written in ink. It's written in lipstick on the rim of a champagne flute, in the ghost of a perfume scent on a credit card receipt, in the silent digital footprints left by a life of effortless, unaccountable luxury. My job is to translate that ephemeral language of privilege into the cold, hard grammar of legal liability. The hunt begins at Grayfield Cove, a 5-star coastal resort where a suite can cost more than a junior analyst's monthly salary, the Westvale Wellness Foundation. Sloane's charitable vanity project had its annual marketing and strategy retreat there in August of last year. The invoices, which I had already flagged, totaled just over $250,000, a staggering sum for a 2-day event for 12 people. But the date is the key. A quick search of the Braxton Vale Society page's archives confirms it. The retreat was held on the exact same weekend my father and Sloane hosted their lavish engagement party at the very same resort. It wasn't a corporate retreat. It was a destination wedding party, subsidized by the company's charitable arm. The optics are appalling. The reality is criminal. I pull the master invoice from the resort. It's a waterfall of extravagances, wine pairings, spa treatments, yacht rentals, but my eyes lock on a line item for floral services from a vendor called Fleur Savage. The name is familiar. I run a cross-reference against our approved vendor list. Nothing. Then I run it against the digital receipts from Sloane's wedding planner, which I had subpoenaed from her Amex account for a different, minor expense audit 6 months ago. There it is. Fleur Savage was the official florist for the Keene-Sloane wedding. She used a corporate event to pay for her wedding flowers. The cover-up is almost as damning as the crime itself. I pull the digital transaction logs for that invoice. At 4:15 p.m. on the day the invoice was submitted, it was coded to Budget Center 441. designated for foundation events. 7 minutes later, at 4:22 p.m., after being flagged by a junior accountant for an amount query, the code was manually overridden and switched to 5729, Special Marketing Projects. The digital signature on the override belongs to David Ames, the head of procurement, the same David who received Sloane's email asking him to make it disappear. 7 minutes. That's how long it took to reroute a 6-figure personal expense and bury it in the labyrinth of the marketing budget. It's the digital equivalent of wiping away fingerprints. From the money, I moved to logistics, the phantom delivery from refrigerated truck 74B. My own internal data is strong, but I need external corroboration. I access a commercial satellite imagery service and purchase archived high-resolution photos of my father's estate from the night in question. The image, time-stamped at 2:30 a.m., clearly shows our truck, the Westvale Nutrients logo visible on its side even in the grainy darkness, parked near the service entrance of the garage, for the final nail in that coffin. I file an anonymous tip through a neighborhood watch app for my father's gated community, asking if anyone's security cameras captured a commercial truck on their street that night. Less than an hour later, a retired lawyer who lives 2 houses down replies with a crisp, clear video file from his front gate Ring camera. The footage, time-stamped 1:12 a.m., shows our truck driving away. The case is closed. Sloane used company resources to cater her party with stolen proprietary product. The most arrogant criminals always document their own crimes. Sloane is no exception. She and her friends treated her wedding festivities like a brand campaign. A search on Instagram for the hashtag Sloane's Soiree yields a public treasure trove of evidence. There are hundreds of photos of smiling, wealthy people drinking what is clearly Dom Perignon, but I'm looking for something specific. I find it on the feed of a minor local socialite. It's a photo of the wedding cake. It's a multi-tiered monstrosity, a monument to bad taste, and right on top, instead of a bride and groom, is a custom-made, sugar-sculpted replica of the Westvale Nutrients corporate logo. She didn't just use company money to fund her party. She branded her personal life with the company's identity, a visual metaphor for her belief that they were one and the same. I screenshot everything, cataloging the photos and linking the public profiles of the guests to our own list of corporate partners and vendors. The digital trail wears lipstick, but it also lives in the mundane machinery of office life. I turn my attention to the email archives. Using my legal hold access, I initiate a recovery protocol for deleted items from the mailbox of Sloane's executive assistant, a young, perpetually terrified woman named Jessica. The system churns for 20 minutes and spits out a collection of files Jessica had tried to scrub. One of them is an Excel spreadsheet, innocently titled Menu Cost Center, XLSX. I open it. The first tab, Catering Budget, lists food and beverage costs for various marketing events, all neatly assigned to the correct internal codes. It looks perfectly normal, but my forensic software flags the file for hidden data. I unhide the second tab. Its name is simply Personal. It's a detailed, itemized budget for Sloane's wedding, from the canapes to the ice sculptures. The line items on the Personal tab are identical in description and cost to dozens of charges on the Catering Budget tab, just assigned to different vendors. It is a perfect, undeniable ledger of her fraud, a Rosetta Stone for her crimes, deleted but not destroyed. Jessica's own records are just as damning. I pull her time-tracking sheets for the month leading up to the wedding. She was meticulous. She logged every 15-minute increment of her day, and there, on a Tuesday afternoon, is a 3-hour block of time coded to Project Management, Brand Outreach. The notes section, however, tells a different story. Jessica had written, Pickup gown from Vera Wang Boutique downtown, delivered to tailor for final alterations. Sloane hadn't just used the company credit card, she had used a salaried employee, on company time, as her personal wedding errand runner. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about her entitlement. The pattern continues. The invoice for the wedding's master of ceremonies, a local news anchor, was paid from the freelancer budget. His service was logged not as MC, but as host for brand live stream event. By dawn, my case is assembled. It's a mountain of evidence, a symphony of greed and deception. Now, I have to compose it into a weapon. I spend the next 4 hours writing. I don't write a story. I write a legal document. It is 14 pages long, single-spaced, with 117 footnotes linking to the evidence appendix. The title is blunt: Memorandum on Investigation into Improper Personal Benefit, Misclassification of Corporate Funds, and Breach of Fiduciary Duty by Chief Marketing Officer Sloan Keene. It is cold, factual, and utterly brutal. I outline the Grayfield Cove deception. I detail the fraudulent invoices, the falsified time cards, the stolen intellectual property. I include the satellite photos, the neighbor's video, the Instagram screenshots, and the recovered Excel file. Every assertion is backed by an exhibit in the secure digital evidence locker I have created. I write the final paragraph with extreme care. It is the bridge between the financial crimes and the physical assault. This pattern of behavior, I type, demonstrates a profound and sustained disregard for corporate policy, ethical boundaries, and the distinction between personal and company assets. This sense of executive entitlement, wherein company resources are viewed as personal property, creates a culture of impunity. It is the conclusion of this investigation that the act of physical violence perpetrated by the CMO on October 21st, see Exhibit 118, was not an isolated incident, but rather the foreseeable and tragic escalation of this unchecked pattern. The belief that one is above the rules of finance naturally leads to the belief that one is above the rules of basic human decency and workplace safety. The pattern is singular. For Exhibit 118, I insert a high-resolution still frame from the kitchen security camera, captured at the exact moment of impact. The image is clear. Sloane's hand blurred in motion, my head snapping to the side, my father's passive form in the background. It is done. The narrative is complete. The paper trail now has a bloody, violent conclusion. I attach the 14-page PDF to a new email. The body of the email contains a single sentence. For your immediate and urgent review, below it, I paste the link to the encrypted drive, the one containing the hundreds of pages of raw evidence. The recipient list has only 3 names: James McTavish, the chairman of the audit committee, Arthur Vance, our external legal counsel, and Eleanor Bishop, the court-appointed independent trustee of the Westvale Nutrients Employee Stock Ownership Plan. My finger hovers over the mouse. This is the point of no return. This is not just an HR complaint. It is a declaration of war. I take a deep breath, and I click Send. In the world of corporate finance, love, loyalty, and blood are liabilities. The only things that are truly binding are the covenants written in a 10-point font on page 87 of a loan agreement. My father and Sloan have spent years mastering the soft, malleable language of family and corporate culture. They never bothered to read the hard, unyielding language of debt. The agreement for our $500 million revolving credit facility, signed last year, is a dense, impenetrable brick of legalese, but I know it by heart. Tucked into Section 9, under representations and warranties, is a clause my father's lawyers probably dismissed as boilerplate. It's titled Material Adverse Effect, or MAE. It's a standard clause that allows the bank to take action if the company's financial health is threatened. But our lead bank, Sterling Trust, had a famously aggressive risk division. At my suggestion during the last negotiation, we accepted their slightly more onerous terms in exchange for a quarter-point interest reduction. My father saw it as a win. I saw it as installing a kill switch. Their version of the MA clause included a specific subsection, an ethics MAE. It defines a material adverse effect as any event or circumstance which could bring the company into public disrepute or signal a catastrophic failure of internal controls. And it explicitly lists 2 triggers: credible evidence of significant personal enrichment by a C-suite executive, and events that give rise to a hostile work environment claim, fraud and workplace violence. Sloan didn't just slap me. She slapped a tripwire connected directly to our primary source of liquidity. I meet the banker, Michael Sterling, at a minimalist coffee shop with concrete floors and an echo. It's a sterile, neutral ground 3 blocks from the office. Michael is in his late 40s, a man who lives and breathes risk analysis, and his tailored suit shows no hint of a wrinkle or a weakness. We exchange pleasantries that neither of us mean. I don't order anything. I slide a single, slim folder across the polished table. 2 pages. Michael, an executive summary for your risk committee. He opens it without a word. His eyes, quick and analytical, scan the pages. He is not reading a story of family drama. He is reading a risk assessment. Page 1 details the financial misclassification, with summary totals, cost center codes, and a reference to a secure digital appendix. Page 2 details the workplace violence incident, referencing the video evidence, the code of conduct violation, and its potential for litigation. I don't mention my relationship to the CEO or the CMO. I am simply the head of compliance, reporting a material event as per our agreement. His face remains a perfect, unreadable mask, but I see a small muscle twitch in his jaw. He closes the folder and pushes it back toward me. You'll understand I can't officially acknowledge receipt of this. Rowan. I understand completely, I say. I'm merely providing a courtesy heads up on a situation you'll likely be reading about in the audit committee's next report. He nods, his mind clearly processing the potential fallout. A public scandal, an SEC inquiry, a stock plunge, the value of the collateral backing his loan evaporating. He stands, his coffee untouched. Thank you for the courtesy. He walks away. My phone buzzes before he's even out the door. A text from his encrypted messaging app. No greeting, no sign-off, just the cold, hard math of a banker protecting his assets. The board has 10 business days to cure this breach upon official notification. Cure is defined as substantive management changes. If the board fails to act, we will be forced to freeze the margin line and reevaluate all covenants. The clock starts now. 10 days. The fuse is lit. The next confirmation comes via email. Eleanor Bishop, the ESOP trustee, is a former federal judge with a spine of steel. Her response to my detailed voicemail and a copy of the executive summary is brief and decisive. Ms. Keene, thank you for bringing this to my attention. This is a matter of grave fiduciary concern. Be advised that should the audit committee's independent counsel verify the substance of your allegations, I will be legally obligated to vote the ESOP's entire proxy block in accordance with the council's recommendation to protect shareholder value. 30% of the company's stock, the single largest block, is now aligned against its own management. With the external forces in motion, it is time to deploy my own. That evening, in the quiet of my apartment, I retrieve the documents from my mother's safe. I read my grandmother's letter again. Her words a mix of love and warning about the man her son had become. Then I study the trust document for the Class 5 shares. The language is ironclad. Upon a vote for the removal of a CEO for ethical misconduct, my shares convert. It's an inheritance of power, a responsibility I never wanted but one I was clearly born to wield. My grandmother, it seems, knew her son better than he knew himself. The next morning, I draft a new document. It's a formal notice of intent to call a special meeting of the board of directors. I invoke Article 3.7 of the Westvale Nutrients Corporate Bylaws, a clause that allows a director or a shareholder of a certain class to demand an emergency session. The purpose of the meeting, I write, is to review findings from an internal investigation into material ethics breaches by senior leadership and to vote on immediate remedial actions, including the potential removal of executive officers. I print it on official letterhead, sign it, and have it hand-delivered by courier to the office of the corporate secretary. The declaration of war is now official. My phone rings less than an hour later. It's my father. His voice is a low, dangerous rumble. Rowan, what have you done? There is no concern in his voice, no apology, just the fury of a king whose authority has been challenged. I've filed the legally required paperwork based on the findings of a compliance investigation. I reply, my voice flat, stripped of all emotion. This isn't a compliance issue. This is family, he barks. You are tearing this family apart over a misunderstanding in the kitchen and some sloppy bookkeeping. The bank doesn't see it as a misunderstanding. Dad, I say calmly, they see it as a covenant breach. I'm doing my job. I'm keeping the bank from calling our loan and putting 4,000 people out of work. You should thank me. He is silent for a long moment. I can hear him breathing, the sound ragged. Don't do this, he says, his voice dropping, changing tactics from anger to a strained plea. We can fix this quietly. Don't bring this before the board. It's too late for quiet, I say, and I hang up. 5 minutes later, a text message appears on my screen. It's from Sloan. We need to talk, woman to woman, no lawyers, no executives, just you and me. It's a pathetic, transparent attempt to pull the conflict back onto personal ground, where she thinks she can manipulate me. I take a screenshot of the message. I open a new email, attach the image, and send it to my personal attorney. I type a single line in the body. For your records, please advise the sender that all future communication should be directed through you. I do not reply to Sloane's text. I have just told her, in the clearest possible terms, that we are no longer family. We are litigants. The official notification arrives late in the afternoon. The corporate secretary, legally bound by the bylaws, has scheduled the emergency session of the board of directors. It is set for Thursday, in 2 days, at 10:00 a.m. sharp. The timeline is aggressive. Good. It gives them less time to circle the wagons, to whip votes, to hide the truth. Everything is in motion. The dominoes are lined up. I pick up my desk phone and dial the internal extension for the 28th floor kitchen. Maria, the supervisor, answers. Maria, it's Rowan Keene, I say. I'd like to place an order for Thursday morning, a large one, 3 dozen sea salt chocolate chip cookies. Please, to be delivered to the main boardroom at 9:45 a.m. There's a slight pause on the other end, and then I hear the warmth in her voice. Yes, Ms. Keene, it would be my pleasure. I hang up the phone and look out the window at the Sterling Trust Bank headquarters across the street. The board wants a war. I'll make sure it's a well-catered one. The night before the board meeting, Sloan decides to throw a party. It's not called a party, of course. It's a brand synergy dinner, an impromptu, high-gloss event held in the ground floor corporate showroom. The space, usually a sterile gallery of our product lines, has been transformed. The harsh track lighting is dimmed, replaced by the soft, flickering glow of hundreds of unscented candles. A string trio plays something innocuous and modern in the corner. Waitstaff in black uniforms glide through the crowd of marketing managers and brand strategists, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A massive floor-to-ceiling backdrop emblazoned with the Westvale Nutrients logo serves as the stage. It is a carefully produced piece of corporate theater, a dress rehearsal for a victory Sloan already assumes is hers. She is not just fighting a war, she is live-streaming it, confident in her ability to control the narrative. She stands at the center of it all, a glass of champagne in hand, wearing a dress the color of blood. She is holding court, recounting a well-rehearsed, entirely fictional version of her life story for a fawning audience and the 3 cameras capturing the event for an internal broadcast. She speaks of her humble beginnings, a narrative she polishes and refines with each telling. She talks about pulling herself up by her bootstraps, a phrase that is particularly insulting coming from a woman who married the CEO and then used the company treasury as her personal Neiman Marcus account. It's not about where you start, she says, her voice resonating with practiced sincerity. It's about having the vision to see where you can go. It's about feeding what's good in yourself. She takes a delicate sip of her wine, a vintage Chardonnay that I know for a fact was charged to the Q4 media buy budget. I am not part of the audience. I stand in the shadows just beyond the main lighting rig, a ghost at her feast. A young audio technician, checking a microphone stand near me, catches my eye. He nods nervously. I watch as a waiter offers Sloan another glass of wine from his tray. As he turns, I step forward just enough to speak into his ear, my voice a low, inaudible murmur to anyone more than a foot away. "Be careful," I whisper. "Don't let the rim of that glass touch the invoice." The young waiter's eyes widen in confusion before he quickly moves on. My presence has not gone unnoticed. Chloe, the marketing intern from the kitchen, approaches me hesitantly. She's holding a tablet, pretending to check stats, but her eyes are full of a nervous concern that is both touching and dangerous for her. "Ms. Keene," she whispers, her voice barely audible over the music. Are you okay? After, the other day?" I offer her a small, reassuring smile. It's important that the fear Sloan cultivates doesn't take root in the junior staff. They are the future of this company, if it is to have one. "I'm fine, Chloe," I say, my voice calm and steady. I glance pointedly toward one of the live stream cameras. The camera is fine, too, and that's what matters. The understanding dawns on her face, a flicker of comprehension and maybe even admiration. She gives a short, sharp nod and melts back into the crowd. I have one final piece of insurance to put in place. I spot Doris, my father's executive assistant for 30 years, and now the de facto office manager. She's a woman of immense institutional knowledge and unwavering discretion, a relic of the company my grandfather built, before the rot set in. She sees me and navigates the crowd, her expression neutral. I hand her a thick, sealed manila envelope. There are no markings on it. "Doris," I say quietly, "please hold this for me. If I am suspended, placed on leave, or for any reason unable to access my office before 10 a.m. on Thursday, I need you to deliver this directly to James McTavish's home, and only his home. Do you understand?" Inside the envelope is a hard copy of the entire dossier, along with a signed affidavit and a letter authorizing him to act as my proxy with the Class 5 shares should I be incapacitated. It's my dead man's switch. Doris takes the envelope, her gaze meeting mine. She has seen more in her 30 years than anyone. She knows this is not a normal request. She simply nods, her grip firm on the package. "Of course, Rowan," she says, and with that, she turns and disappears toward the executive elevators, the package tucked securely under her arm. A hush falls over the room as my father moves to the center of the makeshift stage to join Sloan. He picks up a microphone, his smile as broad and empty as ever. He is here to lend his gravitas to Sloan's performance, to present the united front of the happy corporate family. "I just want to say how proud I am," he begins, his voice resonating with the false warmth of a seasoned CEO. "Proud of the work we do here, proud of the culture we've built, but most of all, proud of the family we have created. They say a business is just bricks and mortar, but Westvale has a heart. The Keene family is strong, and our strength comes from love and from the passion we pour into everything we do." As he speaks, my eyes drift from his face to the secondary camera, the one positioned to capture audience reaction shots. I find the lens. I hold its gaze. I don't smile. I don't scowl. I simply stare. My expression a blank, unreadable slate. I want the recording of this event to have one clear, dissenting voice. I want the board, the bankers, and anyone else who reviews this footage to see that his narrative has a silent, powerful counterpoint. I want them to see the face of the covenant he didn't read. Sloan, sensing the finale of her performance, steps forward and triumphantly links her arm through my father's. She beams at the crowd, then turns her head and looks directly at me, a victorious, saccharine smile playing on her lips. "And I am so proud to be a part of this family," she says, her voice dripping with manufactured emotion. "And so proud of my wonderful daughter." The room erupts in obligatory applause. It is a perfectly executed public maneuver, designed to frame me as the petulant, ungrateful child rebelling against a loving stepmother. It is her final, desperate attempt to win the war of perception before the real war begins. But her victory is short-lived. In my pocket, my phone vibrates with a silent, seismic tremor. I pull it out, keeping the screen angled away from prying eyes. It's an encrypted email notification from Arthur Vance, the external counsel. The subject line is simple. Your memorandum. The body of the message is even simpler. Evidence verified. Sourced and cross-referenced. Conclusions are sound. Recommend immediate board action to mitigate legal and financial exposure. A formal recommendation is being drafted now. It is the benediction I was waiting for. The voice of impartial, unimpeachable legal authority. The machine is now running on its own. It cannot be stopped. I look up from my phone, across the sea of smiling, oblivious faces, and meet Sloane's triumphant gaze. Her smile falters slightly as she sees the utter lack of defeat in my eyes. I turn my back on the stage. I open a new text message. The recipient is James McTavish, chairman of the audit committee. My thumbs move quickly. My message as concise and devastating as a sniper's bullet. Board pack ready. I don't wait for a reply. I walk out of the showroom, leaving the sound of forced applause and clinking champagne glasses behind me. I don't go home. I go back to my office on the 29th floor. I don't turn on the lights. I take off my blazer and drape it over the back of my chair. I sit down. The city lights a glittering tapestry outside my window. Later that night, when the building is silent and the city has gone to sleep, I push my chair away from the desk. I take the thick, bound copy of my dossier, my life's work for the past 48 hours, and place it on the floor to serve as a pillow. I lie down on the plush office carpet, pull my wool coat over me like a blanket, and close my eyes. The paper is cool against my cheek, the sharp smell of toner and ink filling my senses. I am not uncomfortable. I am at peace. I am sleeping on my sword, ready for the dawn. The war would be won in the boardroom, but the final, fatal blow was forged in the past, in the ink of a document Sloane Keene had signed and forgotten, believing it was a shield when it was, in fact, a cage. On the eve of the board meeting, with my dossier complete and the external pressures aligned, a final, nagging thought sparked in my mind. Sloane's arrogance was a defining characteristic. She had co-opted the company's budget, its resources, its employees. Had she also co-opted its lawyers? It was a long shot, but a logical one. Using internal counsel for a personal matter like a prenuptial agreement would be a minor, almost laughably predictable, breach of ethics compared to her other crimes. I logged back into the legal department's document management system. As head of compliance, I have read only access to all executed contracts. I ran a search, not by file name, but by metadata. I searched for any documents drafted in the 6 months leading up to the Keene-Sloane wedding, with my father's name as a party and Sloane's maiden name, Harding, as the other. I filtered it to show only those documents drafted by our then general counsel. The system returned 3 results. 2 were standard NDAs. The third was titled Keene-Harding Prenuptial Agreement Final Exec, PDF. My heart didn't race. It grew cold and still, like a block of ice solidifying in my chest. I opened the file. It was 30 pages of dense, boilerplate legal protection for my father's assets, ensuring a clean separation of his premarital wealth from anything gained during the marriage. It was standard procedure for a man of his stature. I scrolled through the articles: division of property, spousal support, confidentiality, and then I found it. Clause 9. It was titled Behavioral Covenants. Tucked between paragraphs about infidelity and illegal drug use was subsection 9.c. The language was brutally clear. A verified act of domestic violence, as defined by the laws of this state, perpetrated by one party against the other, or against a child or immediate family member of the other party, immediately voids any and all spousal protections and claims to marital assets gained directly or indirectly through the Keene family's primary business entity, Westvale Nutrients. I read it 3 times. It was a poison pill of breathtaking elegance. A clause designed to protect my father and his children, me, from a physically abusive partner. A clause that defined marital assets specifically as those tied to the company, and a clause that thanks to a moment of uncontrolled fury in a corporate kitchen, was fully armed. The legal argument formed in my mind. A perfect, crystalline structure. The slap was workplace violence, a corporate tort. But because the assailant was my stepmother and the victim was her husband's daughter, it existed simultaneously in a second. Overlapping jurisdiction. Family law. The act occurred on company property, but the relationship was domestic. One single, reckless act had breached two separate legal domains, and in doing so, had triggered the one clause that could financially annihilate her, all of her stock options, her performance bonuses, her entire claim to the fortune she had so carefully integrated herself into. All of it was now contingent on this single clause. The next phase required moving beyond the digital realm. It required the cold, impartial machinery of the state. I spent an hour assembling a new, smaller file. I printed the medical report from the urgent care clinic I had visited after the slap, detailing a minor laceration to the inner lip and significant contusion to the left cheek. I included a printed, notarized statement for myself. I also included a redacted, anonymous statement from the catering supervisor, Maria, which my lawyer had procured. I had maintained a perfect, unbroken chain of custody for every document. At 7:00 a.m., the morning of the board meeting, I did not go to the office. I went to the Braxton Vale Police Department's central precinct. The air inside smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant, a world away from the citrus-scented lobbies of my life. I didn't ask for a detective. I went to the Domestic Disputes Division and filed a report for a temporary workplace protection order. I was a citizen reporting an assault. I presented the file to the desk sergeant, a tired-looking man with a calm demeanor. He reviewed the documents, his expression unreadable. "You have a medical report and a witness statement," he said. "It says here the incident occurred in a corporate kitchen. Are there cameras?" "Yes," I said. "There are." "We'll need the footage to proceed with an emergency order." "I have it with me," I replied, sliding a small, evidence-bagged USB drive across the counter. An hour later, my lawyer received the notification. A judge had signed the temporary order. It was a standard workplace protection directive, but I had requested specific, surgical terms. Sloan Keene was prohibited from coming within 50 feet of my person, my office, and two specific locations within the Westvale Tower, the 28th floor kitchen and the entire 29th floor, which housed the finance, legal, and compliance departments. I had effectively, with a single legal filing, barred her from the centers of both her original crime and my investigation. I had crippled her ability to operate within her own company. The reaction was immediate. My lawyer received a furious call from Sloan's litigator, a notoriously aggressive man named Marcus Thorne. His voice, even recounted to me, was apoplectic. "This is a transparent and malicious abuse of the legal system," Thorne had yelled. "This was a workplace disagreement, not domestic violence. We'll have this thrown out by lunch." My counsel, a calm and collected woman named Sarah, had simply let him vent. "Mr. Thorne," she'd replied coolly, "the nature of the assault is a matter for a family court judge to determine in a full hearing. However, the verified evidence of a physical strike between two family members is more than sufficient grounds for an ex parte temporary order to ensure the safety of my client. The order stands." Sarah understood my objective perfectly. I didn't need a criminal conviction. I didn't want to see Sloan in jail. That was a messy, unpredictable outcome. My goal was leverage. I wanted to attach the public, sordid specter of a domestic violence charge and a police record directly to a C-suite executive of a publicly traded company on the morning of a critical board meeting. I wanted the board to understand that the company now had a CMO who couldn't legally access her own finance department. I wanted them to have to choose between their loyalty to my father and the catastrophic liability Sloan had become. As I finally walked into the Westvale Tower, the official letter was being delivered to my father's office by a Sterling Trust Bank courier. It was printed on heavy, cream-colored bond paper, a formal, signed declaration of the text message I had received. The bank was now officially on the record. The board of directors had 10 calendar days to cure the covenant breach. The clock was now ticking for everyone to hear. I stepped into the elevator, the leather of my briefcase cool against my hand. Inside it was the dossier. Inside me was a cold, hard certainty. The stage was set. The actors were in place. The audience was terrified. I thought of the cookies I had ordered, which would be arriving soon. They were probably already cooling on a rack in the kitchen, their warmth dissipating into the cold, sterile air. The cookies were cold. The file was hot. The boardroom on the 30th floor is a cathedral of corporate power, a silent, imposing space paneled in dark, glossy walnut that seems to absorb all sound. The air is cool and still. At precisely 10:00 a.m., the 10 members of the Westvale Nutrients Board of Directors are in their leather chairs around the massive table. A collection of grim, severe faces, my father, Everett Keene, sits at the head of the table, his usual air of command replaced by a brittle, defensive tension. Sloane is not present. Per the terms of the temporary protection order, she is not legally allowed on this floor. I am seated at the opposite end of the table, the position of least seniority, which today feels like the position of greatest power. I am an observer at my own execution, or my own coronation. In front of me sits a single, thick, black binder. The gold lettering on the spine is stark and simple. Ethics M.A. My father clears his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. He forces a strained, placating smile. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he begins, his voice attempting a tone of reasonable authority. "I know there are concerns. It seems we've had a small misunderstanding in one of our kitchens, compounded by some aggressive accounting interpretations. It's a family matter that has unfortunately spilled over into the corporate domain. I can assure you, we are handling it internally." He's trying to frame it as a domestic spat, a triviality. He's trying to shrink the crisis down to a size he can control. He doesn't get the chance. James McTavish, the chairman of the audit committee, and a man whose defining feature is a complete lack of sentimentality, raises a hand, a gesture that is less a request and more a command. "Everett, with all due respect, the time for handling this as a family matter is over," McTavish says, his Scottish accent clipping the words with precision. "The committee has reviewed the preliminary report from our independent counsel, and we feel it's best to begin with the facts. Let's review Exhibit A." He nods to an aide, and the vast, high-definition screen that covers the far wall flickers to life. There is no sound at first, just the cold, clinical view from the 28th floor kitchen camera. The board watches in dead silence as the scene unfolds in excruciating, high-resolution detail. Sloane's aggressive posture, my calm refusal, her hand clamping onto my wrist, and then the slap. The video is so clear you can see the ripple of impact across my cheek. The sound kicks in, a sharp, ugly crack that makes two of the directors physically flinch. The wooden spoon clatters to the floor. And then comes my father's voice, amplified by the room's state-of-the-art sound system, filling the space with its casual, horrifying indifference. "Well, who's hungry?" The video freezes on his smiling, untroubled face, in the cold, silent judgment of the boardroom. His words are 1,000 times more damning than the slap itself. It is the sound of absolute moral failure. McTavish lets the image hang in the air for a long moment before nodding to the aide again. The screen changes, displaying the face of Michael Sterling from the bank, patched in via a secure video link. His expression is grim. "Good morning," Michael says, his voice devoid of any warmth. "As you know, Sterling Trust was notified of a potential covenant breach. I am here to inform the board that, upon review of the evidence provided by your audit committee's counsel, we consider this a confirmed ethics MAE event. The bank's position is clear. A failure by this board to take immediate and substantive action to address the failures in leadership and internal controls will constitute a default on your credit facility. The 10-day cure period has begun. We expect a plan of action by the end of the day." He doesn't need to say more. He has just threatened to bankrupt the company. His face disappears from the screen. The silence that follows is heavier now, thick with the stench of fear. McTavish speaks again. "Arthur," he says, turning to the speakerphone in the center of the table. Arthur Vance's disembodied voice, dry as old parchment, fills the room. "The recommendation of external counsel is unequivocal," he states, "to satisfy the bank's requirements and mitigate significant legal exposure for the company and its directors. We advise the immediate and indefinite suspension of the Chief Marketing Officer, Sloan Keene, pending a full external investigation. Furthermore, given the CEO's presence at the precipitating event and his subsequent failure to act, which the bank has cited as a catastrophic failure of leadership, we strongly recommend the board consider a change in the chief executive role to prevent a default." The hammer has fallen. My father's face is a mask of disbelief and fury. He has lost control of the room. "This is absurd," he sputters. "This is my company." "It is a publicly traded company, Everett," McTavish corrects him coolly, "and we are its fiduciaries. Rowan, you have the floor." All eyes turn to me. I stand. I do not approach the head of the table. I stay where I am. I don't need to. The screen is my lectern. "Good morning," I say, my voice even and clear. "What you have before you is not an accusation. It is a diagnosis." My presentation begins. 12 slides, 7 minutes. I am concise, my language free of emotion or hyperbole. I present the flow of money, using animated charts to show funds moving from corporate accounts to wedding vendors. I show the GPS data from the delivery truck, the satellite photos, the Instagram pictures. I display the recovered emails. Sloan's words, "Make it disappear, babe," projected 10 feet high. I conclude with a slide summarizing the 3 core threats: the financial liability from the fraud, the legal liability from the assault, and the existential liability from the bank. The events of the past week are not the disease, I conclude, my eyes meeting each director's in turn. They are the symptoms of a culture that has forgotten the distinction between leadership and ownership, a culture that has placed personal relationships above fiduciary duty. This is not sustainable, it is not profitable, and as of this morning, it is no longer tolerable. I sit down. The silence is absolute. My father is the one who breaks it. He pushes his chair back and rises to his feet, his face flushed with a dark, dangerous rage. He points a trembling finger at me down the length of the table. "You," he says, his voice a low, guttural growl. "This is what you do? You betray your own family?" I rise slowly to meet his gaze. I do not raise my voice. I do not need to. The facts are my armor. "You have it backwards, Dad," I reply, my voice cutting through the tension. "I am not betraying our family. I am protecting the 4,800 families who draw a salary from this company, the ones who rely on us to make payroll next month, the ones who don't have the luxury of treating this company like a personal piggy bank. My only loyalty is to them, and to the long-term survival of this business. That is my job, a job you gave me." Before he can respond, another voice cuts in. Eleanor Bishop, the ESOP trustee, her face projected on the screen. "For the record," she says, her voice carrying the weight of a judge's gavel, "Council has verified the substance of these allegations. I will be voting the entire ESOP proxy block in accordance with Council's recommendation to suspend the CMO and support any motion that ensures the stability of the company and protects employee shareholder value." It's another devastating blow. He has not only lost the bank, he has lost his people. His eyes dart around the table, searching for an ally, and finding only stone-faced men and women calculating their own survival. He is alone. This is the moment. I reach into my briefcase and retrieve a single, sealed envelope of aged parchment. I slide it down the polished surface of the table. It glides silently, coming to a stop directly in front of James McTavish. "There is one final piece of business," I say. "That is a letter and trust document left to me by my grandmother, Eleanor Keene." McTavish slits the envelope open and reads, his eyes widening almost imperceptibly. It details the existence of a special class of stock, I explain to the room. Class 5 super voting shares. They lie dormant, but are activated by one condition: a board vote concerning the removal of a C-suite executive for reasons of gross ethical misconduct. In such a vote, they carry the weight of 100 common shares each, as the sole beneficiary of the trust. I control them. This vote will not be a matter of debate. It will be a matter of arithmetic. Checkmate. The room is frozen. My father looks at me, and for the first time, the rage in his eyes is replaced by something else. The hollow, desolate look of utter defeat. He has not just been beaten, he has been surgically dismantled. McTavish clears his throat. We have 2 motions on the floor, put forward by the Audit Committee based on the recommendation of counsel. He announces, first, a vote on the immediate, indefinite suspension of Chief Marketing Officer Sloan Keene from all duties and responsibilities, without pay. All in favor? Hands go up around the table. One after another, a forest of assent. It is unanimous. Motion carries, McTavish says flatly. Second, to cure the covenant breach and ensure operational stability, a motion to appoint an interim chief executive officer, effective immediately. The candidate proposed by counsel has the necessary institutional knowledge and the confidence of our financial partners. He pauses, looking down at the paper in front of him. The name on the proposal is Rowan Keene. The name hangs in the air, an impossible, audacious proposition. Before the shock can even register on the faces around the table, the heavy walnut doors to the boardroom burst open. Sloan stands there, her face a pale, contorted mask of fury. She must have been waiting in a nearby office, listening, waiting for her summons. Her eyes are wild, locking onto me down the length of the table. You will not do this, she hisses, taking a step into the room. But she doesn't get a second. 2 uniformed security guards, men I recognize from the lobby, step in immediately behind her. They are calm, professional, and implacable. One of them, a large man with a quiet voice, says, "Ma'am, you are in violation of a court order. You are not permitted on this floor. Please come with us." "Get your hands off me!" she shrieks, trying to push past them. "Everett, do something!" But my father doesn't move. He doesn't even look at her. He is staring at me, his gaze hollow. The anger is gone, replaced by a devastating, impotent understanding. He is a man who has built an empire on relationships, on handshakes, on the soft power of his name, and he is now looking at his own daughter, the living embodiment of the hard, unyielding power of a contract. He finally understands that the covenants he signed are stronger than his own blood. He has been undone not by a rival or a market crash, but by the fine print. The guards take Sloan firmly by each arm. Her struggle is brief and undignified. As they escort her out, her final, parting shriek echoes down the hall. "This isn't over, you bitch!" Then the doors click shut, and the profound, heavy silence returns to the room. James McTavish doesn't miss a beat. He looks around the table. A vote is on the floor for the appointment of Rowan Keene as interim chief executive officer. All in favor? Again, the hands go up. Slower this time, more deliberate, but they go up. Each one is a nail in my father's coffin. It is unanimous. McTavish picks up the small, ceremonial gavel from its stand. He brings it down on the walnut block. The sound is not a crack, but a sharp, solid thud. It's a sound of finality, of an ending and a beginning, and in my mind, it echoes with the memory of another sound, the hollow, clumsy clatter of a wooden spoon on a cold tile floor. The first sound was my humiliation. This one is my vindication. It is the most beautiful music I have ever heard. The motion carries, McTavish declares. Congratulations, Madam CEO. The corporate secretary, a man who has spent 20 years taking notes for my father, approaches me with a single sheet of paper and a heavy fountain pen. It is the official acceptance of the role. I take the pen. The metal is cool and substantial in my hand. I sign my name on the line. The nib glides across the thick paper, the black ink a stark, clean line. It feels less like writing and more like making the first, perfect cut into the fondant of a wedding cake, an act of precise, elegant destruction. The meeting dissolves. There are no handshakes, no congratulations, just a quiet, tense scraping of chairs as the directors file out, avoiding my father's gaze and offering me nervous, uncertain nods. My first act as CEO takes less than 5 minutes. I dictate a simple, direct email to the entire company. The subject is, a renewed commitment. The message is 3 sentences long. Effective immediately. I will be assuming the role of interim CEO. Westvale Nutrients is unconditionally committed to ensuring a safe and respectful workplace for every employee. Our company was built on a foundation of integrity, and we will now rededicate ourselves to that principle with complete financial transparency. I press send. The message goes out to 4,800 people. The old kingdom has fallen. The new era has begun. I walk out of the boardroom and into the hushed, carpeted hallway of the executive floor. The air smells different, or maybe I'm just breathing it for the first time. The faint scent of burnt coffee from a distant break room is gone, replaced by the smell of a fresh pot brewing somewhere nearby. It is the smell of a new morning. As I walk toward the elevators, I see Chloe, the marketing intern, standing by a window, pretending to be on her phone. She sees me, and her eyes go wide. She takes a half step forward, then stops, unsure of the new protocol. I stop and give her a small, genuine smile. She lowers her phone, her voice a barely audible whisper. "Congrats, Ms. Keene." "Thank you, Chloe," I say, and it's Rowan. I don't go down to my old office. I go down to the 28th floor. I walk back into the kitchen where this all began. It is empty now, scrubbed clean, the fluorescent lights humming their endless, neutral note. The violent energy of 2 days ago is gone, replaced by a quiet, waiting calm. I find the industrial-sized tub of cookie dough in the walk-in refrigerator. I pull on a pair of heat-resistant mitts, scoop a dozen perfect rounds onto a fresh sheet of parchment paper, and slide them into a preheated oven. It is a simple, domestic act, an act of creation in a space that had seen only destruction. I am feeding what's good. As I close the oven door, Maria, the catering supervisor, comes around the corner. She doesn't say anything. She simply holds out her hand. In her palm is the heavy wooden spoon that had been knocked to the floor. It is clean, the wood smooth and warm. I take it from her. It feels heavier than I remembered. A tool, a weapon, a scepter. Our eyes meet, and in her steady, respectful gaze, I see the silent approval of the people who make this company run. The people who were here long before Sloan, and will be here long after. I nod to her, a gesture of thanks. Then I walk over to the internal communication panel on the wall. I press the button for the all-floor broadcast to the catering staff. "This is Rowan," I say, my voice clear and calm, echoing in kitchens and prep stations throughout the building. "Please send a full lunch service up to the main boardroom for everyone who was in the meeting and charge it to the office of the CEO." I pause for a beat. Do not, under any circumstances, bill it to a marketing code. I release the button. I can almost hear the quiet sigh of relief from the accounting department. I turn back to the counter, leaning against the cool steel. The weight of the last 3 days settles on my shoulders. It has been a lifetime. My phone buzzes in my pocket. I pull it out. It is a text from Michael Sterling at the bank. It is, like all his communications, brutally efficient. 2 words. Cure accepted. I read the message, and then I read it again. A long, slow breath I didn't know I was holding escapes my lips, my shoulders, which have been coiled in a knot of tension for days. Finally relax. The war is over. We are safe. The oven timer chimes, a soft, polite sound that cuts through the sterile hum of the 28th floor kitchen. The smell of baked sugar and melting chocolate fills the air, a warm, comforting scent that is utterly at odds with the corporate bloodshed of the past hour. It is the smell of home, of normalcy, and today, it is the smell of victory. I pull the tray of perfectly browned cookies from the oven and set them on the steel prep counter. They are a mirror image of the ones I brought to the audit committee, the ones that served as the prelude to this war. These, however, are not an offering. They are a declaration. I walk to the internal phone on the wall, its plastic cool beneath my fingers. I dial the extension for the main boardroom. A nervous-sounding administrative aide answers on the first ring. I don't identify myself. I don't need to. My voice is now the only one that matters. "Lunch is ready," I say, my tone even, placid, as if I were announcing the weekly sales figures. I hang up before she can reply. I turn back to the counter. Lying there, where Maria left it, is the wooden spoon. I pick it up. The wood is smooth, seasoned by years of use, a simple, honest tool. It was the first sound in this story, the clumsy, accidental percussion of an assault. Now, it feels like a baton, a gavel, a scepter. I walk across the slick tile floor, my heels making a sharp, decisive click-clack that echoes in the quiet room. I place the spoon gently on the counter right beside the main service pass-through, an artifact laid to rest. Then, I lift my gaze and look directly into the dark, unblinking eye of the security camera on the ceiling, the same lens that served as my silent, impartial witness. I offer it no smile, no expression at all, just a long, steady look of acknowledgement, a silent communion between the observer and the observed, the evidence and the outcome. The elevator dings softly down the hall. A moment later, they appear at the far entrance to the kitchen, a procession of the defeated. The board directors walk first, a scattered group of ghosts in expensive suits, their eyes fixed on the floor, on their shoes, on anything but me. They move with the stunned, shuffling gait of survivors emerging from a wreck. My father is the last to appear. He looks smaller than I have ever seen him, the sharp lines of his bespoke suit seeming to hang on a diminished frame. He stops at the threshold of the kitchen, this space he so casually commanded, and looks at me. There is nothing left in his eyes. No anger, no pride, no love. Just the vast, empty space where a kingdom used to be. They walk past me in a funereal silence. They are a parade of ghosts haunted by a question they will never dare to ask again. The air is heavy with the ghost of two unspoken words. Who's hungry? The silence is their answer. I watch them go, then turn my back on them, dismissing them from my world. I walk to the filtered water dispenser and fill a tall, clear glass. The water is cold and clean. I take a long, slow drink. Then, I reach for one of the cookies from the tray. It is still warm, the chocolate soft and molten. I take a bite. The flavors flood my senses. The deep, caramel notes of the brown sugar, the sharp, bright spark of sea salt, the steady, comforting hum of vanilla. It is the taste of a promise kept, the taste of a debt paid in full. From the corner of my eye, I see two of the prep chefs who were present for the slap. They are standing by the dishwashing station, trying to look busy, but I can see the ghost of a smile playing on their lips. One of them catches my eye and gives a small, almost imperceptible nod. It is a shared secret, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in the earth beneath our feet. I take another bite of the cookie, and I look back up at the camera. I know the microphone is sensitive enough to pick up my voice. Even from here, I don't raise it. I don't need to shout. The quietest words are now the ones that carry the most weight. "Who's hungry now?" I say, the words clear and calm in the quiet kitchen. I catch my reflection in the dark screen of a small monitor on the counter. The face looking back at me is pale, composed, and unfamiliar in its newness. The faint swelling on my cheek is gone. The small cut on my lip has healed. There is no trace of blood, no sign of the victim. All that is left is the sharp, clean, unsmudged line of my lipstick. It is a line that has been drawn, a boundary that will never be crossed again. I walk to the main light switch for the kitchen. With a single, decisive flick, I turn off the overhead fluorescent strips, plunging the back half of the room into a cool, deep shadow. The only light that remains is the warm, focused glow of the heat lamps over the service pass-through, creating a perfect theatrical spotlight on the tray of freshly baked cookies, an offering, a warning, a feast. I turn and walk toward the door, my footsteps the only sound. The heavy kitchen door swings shut behind me with a soft, final sigh of compressed air. The story is over. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'm always so curious to know where my stories travel. So please let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Rowan's revenge and how it all played out. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. And if you really want to support the channel and help this story get heard by so many more people, please hit that hype button. Your support means the world to me.